Switch Radio.
Well, I guess kicking off with a nice simple one to start with. Obviously, the show has been a massive hit all around the world. Why do you think that is? Why do you think this world has captured people's imagination so much?
I think probably because the historical evidence that they have for the Vikings, there isn't that much. And I think as much as we can in this show, they're kind of getting all the sources that they have of the evidence of what, and trying to make a real world of it. And instead of it just being the really angry Vikings that we know of, actually they're real people and there's real families. And I think everybody can kind of relate to that.
I think one of the great aspects of the show is how strong the female characters are and how well developed they are.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk specifically about your character and what excited you about that when you first saw that first script?
With Helga, when I was first introduced to her, I was kind of told that she was the Viking hippie, and she was kind of different to all the other girls, and I think she still is because she's not a fighter, and she's really complex, and I think that's in so many female characters that I'd read before. Just the complexity, especially of the subject matters that are brought up with her and Floki. We have mental health issues that are brought up, and how they deal with that, and also the era, the Viking era, is just fascinating. So I think that excited me, particularly with Helga.
Was it difficult to get into the mindset of a character, back in the Vikings?
Yes and no. Yes, obviously, because you have to kind of research, and it's completely different from today's world. But actually, I entered halfway through the first season, and the sets, as I'm sure you can see from watching, they're so incredible, and you kind of walk into a whole world. It's not just we're getting to costume, and you kind of already feel that you're kind of taken to another place. But the sets really are as you see them. Like, you walk into the most incredible sceneries, and that helps you transport yourself there quite quickly, actually.
Okay, so what was it like when you watched it back and you watched it all come together?
It's crazy. When you're there, it feels epic to a certain extent, but there are some things that are CGI'd on top of that, and when you watch it back, you really feel in the world. I went to the north of Norway actually to film a documentary recently, and the scale of where they actually were in the time, it's still that you go, and it's mind blowing. And I think you do get that feeling when you watch the show.
And are there any, because obviously Helga's quite a sort of recurring character, are there any particular things that you particularly have enjoyed so far about being, a particular story that she's been involved in, particularly like with Floki or otherwise, that you've enjoyed the most?
Having a child, our wedding scene was amazing to film. It was an incredible set. And having a child as a person as well, it was an amazing experience actually going through that as an actor. And Floki's journey is he's a very complex character, and us kind of progressing through that, and Helga finding her voice finally, because for ages she was just kind of she looked after Floki a lot, and finally she kind of snapped and was like, no, I have a voice and I have a say, and that's been great as an actor to develop her like that.
It's a fantastic cast. Can you talk a little bit about working with the rest of the team?
I work mainly with Gustav, who plays Floki, who is a genius. He's an amazing actor, crazy on and off set, but in a very, very good way. And he brings so much energy. And the cast, it's such an ensemble piece, actually, more than any other things that I've filmed in the past. We all get on. It's a family. We're all away from home, so it's kind of a home away from home now, and we've become so close that there's no animosity. It's such a lovely place to work. Gustav is amazing. He gives a lot as an actor, so it's great.
Obviously, I mean, you work, like you say, a lot with Floki, but of the other characters in the show, are there any that you particularly find their journey the most interesting, the most compelling for you personally?
As an actor, I think Travis is insane. I think he's amazing. He's the journey that Ragnar's been on throughout, and him sitting in silence tells a huge story. I think a lot of what he does is a lot different to any other actor. He likes those moments of no dialogue, and he somehow just kind of tells a story with his eyes. I think that's an amazing skill to have. I think the women are really interesting. Princess Auslog, I think, who became Queen Auslog, is her character was kind of always looked at a really negative way, but again, it's a really complex female character that I've loved watching. And Athelstan, his journey, I think, as an actor is one that's bigger than most people ever get to play, and I think George Blagden is a great, great actor.
And what sort of, I mean, obviously you can't give too much away about the upcoming season,
Yeah.
but can you give any sort of hints without spoiling at all? It's probably the worst question to get, but what can we expect from Series 4?
It's bigger and better for sure than all the others. I have been saying a bit today that there's more episodes. I can't tell you how many more, but it's definitely extended past the 10 that we normally have, which is really exciting because it means that all the worlds can be explored in further depth. I hope everybody's seen up to the end of season 3, but we found out obviously that Floki killed Athelstan, and that's found out at the very end. So obviously the repercussions of that for our storyline is where season 4 kind of picks up. And I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, that's the journey that we start on for sure this year.
The depth and the intricacies of the Norse mythology is well documented. Is that something that you yourself has kind of delved in?
Yeah, to some extent. I've read books, and as I said recently, actually, I went to the north of Norway to film this documentary, and they still very much have this kind of thinking that the land is alive. It's very, and I think that for me it's fascinating. So yeah, we've all tried to do as much research. So the really interesting thing about the Vikings is that every production that's made, everything that's done on them, it's all interpretation because there's really not that much evidence. So the mythology kind of comes in. They don't want to go into fantasy with it at all, but the mythology is definitely there in it. And I think the most exciting things in this show is when the mythology and real life kind of come together. And that's the best times when there's like the big sacrifice scenes and all of that. It feels really spiritual, and I think that's kind of all with the mythology as well.
I think the blood eagle was
that was
especially gripping, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, that was amazing. And they're my favourite scenes actually. All the big, when we do the sacrifices, the blood eagles, and we come together, and it's hundreds of extras, and there's real fire, and it's always outside and freezing cold, and there's just an epic. You do suddenly feel like you're part of something really, really special during those moments.
And obviously there's a really, like you say, a sort of a spiritual kind of fantastical element to the show, but there's also a grounding in sometimes quite brutal violence. How important do you think it is to get that balance right and to have that as an element of the show?
I think it's really important to have it as part of it. I certainly think that's the thing they were trying to stay away from at first, because they wanted it to be a family show. They wanted to bring in all these characters. The Vikings were fighters, but most of the stuff that was written about them was actually written by the people they invaded. So it's very negative, and it's always very, it's always a negative. So actually, they wanted to keep it, and from their point of view, actually, so that they weren't all just the bad guys. So I think getting the balance is really important in this show. I also think bringing the female fighters in as well. I don't know how well that was always documented, but it's been fascinating seeing the fans react to that and how powerful the females could be as well as the men in the fighting.
If you had to be any of the other characters, there's a wealth of really amazingly sort of three-dimensional characters. If you had to be any of the other characters other than Helga, regardless of gender or age or whatever else, who would you pick and why?
Good question. I think I would probably pick Floki. I think he is a really amazing. He's bought some, but also the script, the writing for him is just amazing. But he goes through some really challenging situations. He kind of keeps fighting back to being this guy. I think he's an interesting mix of. He's a worksmith, so he does all his boat building. He's a little bit crazy, very crazy at times, but he's a good guy underneath it all. And our relationship in it has been really interesting. The dynamic, because he does love, and he loved Ragnar in a way that I think plays out beautifully. So he's just the complexity of him, I think, would be great to play.
Sort of touching on mental health, obviously, Vikings, obviously they wouldn't have a concept of, psychiatry or psychotherapy or any of these different things. How has it been sort of exploring the mental health aspect of, particularly with Floki and Helga, in this sort of era, in contrast to, say, the way that we interpret mental health now? Are there any sort of benefits, or how has that been in terms of the story?
I think there wouldn't have been such things as therapists, but I think the Vikings, one of the things they're greatly known for is storytelling and talking, and they didn't write like as traditionally as we know it now. And so I think actually talking, and I think Floki and Helga's relationship and discovering is just, they do have a special bond, and I think probably that is almost therapeutic, because they spoke a lot about the problems. They fought things together, and I don't think it's probably dissimilar, because the wording and the wording's different to who they were. But I almost do think that Helge's character is that person for him. So, somebody that he can go through these challenges with, and they fight it together.
Obviously, you're working with a lot of intense subject matter. I'm curious, when the camera's not rolling, are there things that you guys do on set to lighten the mood and kind of relax a little?
No, it's all serious. It's all serious at all times. Travis brings all the naughtiness on set, for sure. He's a jokester. Recently, he's always out in nature, Travis. Whatever we're doing, he's kind of hidden behind trees and doing his thing. But he found a frog recently and put it down one of the cast members' dresses to. That breaks up a long, if it's a sad scene as well. He breaks it up with jokes, and we're, as I said before, we're such a family now. Like, it really is. We're friends, and we now even we live together. We're such a lovely group of people. So there's never a dull moment. It's definitely not all serious behind the cameras at all. We're having a great time.
Have you ever been a victim of Travis? Has he ever put any frogs anywhere on your personage?
No, and let's hope I never am. No, he's no, touch wood. Wherever there's wood, I've been the lucky one so far, but there's been a few. And one of the characters from the first season got a chicken, and there was just live chickens running around. He's full of. I think you need a prankster to kind of lighten the mood, and Travis is definitely the guy to do that, for sure.
There's some quite mesmerising cinematography. As a fan yourself, do you have a favourite scene?
I do, from cinematography-wise. It was a scene, I keep bringing it back to Floki and Helge, but I do really strongly, two scenes for us. There was one in the water when it was just Floki's head, and I just think it's such an amazing, I don't know whose decision it was I think it was in the scripts, but actually just the visuals of that, I think, were absolutely amazing. And also, it was such an out-of-the-blue scene that nobody expected. It was a scene where Floki was telling me as a pregnant Helga that he was going to go away again, and I told him not to, and we thought it was just going to be on the beach, and we turned up to film. And on the day, they decided to put us in just in the middle of a field, lying down, and so all the ferns were above us, and it was just us, without any of the crew around us, and a camera on a crane. And I just think it was a really beautiful scene, really, really beautiful.
I think, just looking to the future, obviously each season has its own kind of tone.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, how do you think the tone overall of the next season compares to the previous three?
I think it's unexpected this year. There's a lot of unexpected friendships that are made. There's a lot of unexpected relationships that are formed. I think I can say that Ragnar has another relationship during this season, and it's very different from what else you've seen with him. And you see more of the other worlds that we've kind of been to so far. You kind of go back to them. So it's kind of exploring and expanding on what we've seen so far, and just bigger and better, I'd say, than before.
Is that an exciting thing for you, the fact that with each season we do get just a bigger glimpse of the world, and particularly the new characters, I think each season seem to add a different dimension?
Definitely, yeah. I think that's who the Vikings were. They just kept raiding, and they kept getting new spaces, and I think if we didn't explore that and we didn't get new worlds and new characters in, then the show would stop being interesting, so that we can't keep with the same place and the same cast. So yeah, I think it's vital to the plot to kind of keep moving forward, bringing in new people.
Any last questions, or are we?
Well, I guess just apart from Vikings, is there anything else on your horizon at the moment?
No, we're still actually filming at the moment, so I'm just definitely all systems on this. Who knows about what will happen next year? But I've done lots of historical stuff. I'd love to do something that's kind of edgy, like a big British drama. I don't know, something. And I was born and bred East London, so I'd quite like to do something back to my roots a little bit at some point.
And do you have a message for Vikings fans before you leave us?
Thank you all so much for watching. Without your support and without you guys watching, the series wouldn't continue. So keep watching, and we'll keep going.